Next up, we have one of my colleagues in the cloud advocacy team, Justin Yu, who is going to be talking about all things Blazor. So I'm going to welcome Justin to the stage. Hey, Justin.
Hello, how are you?
We're pulling it together. We're surviving. I did see some questions came in the chat for me. I'll jump into chat afterwards and answer those. So yes, I did see them, and I'll get back to you. Don't feel like I'm just actively ignoring chat or anything like that.
Yep.
But I'm going to hand it over to Justin, and I'll see you at the other side.
Okay. Right. Let's get started. Right. So, hello everyone. Good morning, excuse me. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you are. I'm going to discuss this topic about migrating your legacy ASP.NET WebForms application to Blazor with minimizing your code changes. My name is Justin from Microsoft as a senior cloud advocate. This is my social media handle of X, formerly known as Twitter. So if you follow me on there, you will be able to see a lot of talks about .NET and Azure. And also, this is my GitHub handle. So you can take a look at the bunch of sample code as well. Now, let's begin with a simple demo. That demo application is the ASP.NET WebForms application. So through this application, I'm sending a YouTube video URL to the application and receiving a summary of that video. So its backend API is running on Azure Functions. And first of all, this backend API gets a subtitle from YouTube in a given language. Then API sends that subtitle to Azure OpenAI service to summarize it in a given language. So ready? So let's get started. Now I have this Visual Studio application. I have the backend API here, and I have the WebForm application here. So I'm going to run this application. Now, what is happening here is that this is a typical ASP.NET WebForms application. You will be able to see the familiarity of this the UI. And yeah, let's come here. So this is the typical part of the default.aspx page. And I have a user control of YouTube Summarizer. And I'm gonna put the YouTube URL like this. And I will choose, because this is a YouTube URL, it's all about the spoken languages in English. So I'm going to summarize either the English or Korean, but I'm not choosing the English for that. And click the summarize button, then see how it's going. So it will be the summarizing the entire video of it takes about an hour, and it will summarize in 5 different breakpoints. So while we are waiting, let's get back to the page here. So this is the typical WebForm application. I hit the default page, and I register the user control here, and this is the user control that I'm going to use, and this is the user control. So it has the typically we have the UI part, HTML part, as well as the code behind the part as well, like this. So we have user control, we inherited the user control, and we have the page load event, and we have complete event like this. So we have buttons here. Oops, here. Okay, we have buttons on click event, and we have complete button, complete click, and clear click, something like this, right? And this is the progress bar, which is handled by JavaScript, like this, jQuery JavaScript here. So this is how we have been developing and running our ASP.NET WebForms application, right? And let's get back to the page, and we have the summary of this 5 bullet points. So this is how the ASP.NET WebForms application works. Now get back to the slide. When we saw this demo, WebForm applications looks still okay, right? Does that mean we should stay on here? Then why should we stay on ASP.NET WebForms application? ASP.NET WebForms, this technology actually is 20 years old now. In other words, it's mature enough. And still many organizations are using this type of applications. WebForms applications use web controls for user interactions. They are very expressive and rich so that developers simply use them. And this, because of this rich and expressive nature of the web controls, these provide us with similar development experiences to WinForm application development. So what's the similarity? It's all driven by event. So whether you click a button or select a value from a drop-down list or tick a checkbox, they all raise events, and event handlers take care of them. Because of this maturity and familiarity, still many organizations have been developing and using these type of WebForms applications. At the same time, there are a bunch of other reasons of moving away from the WebForms applications. I mean, there are reasons to migrate the existing WebForms applications to something else. So why should migrate? Nowadays, if you consider cloud-native application development, cross-platform support is crucial. But ASP.NET WebForms applications only run on Windows machines, which is a huge drawback. And ASP.NET WebForms applications only support .NET Framework up to 4.8, actually 4.8.1. Today, we have .NET 8 released with number of awesome features, but we can't enjoy these type of new features because of the lack of support on ASP.NET WebForms. Another reason I want to put an emphasis on that is, some modern libraries only support asynchronous method. For example, the HTTP client class only contains the async method. However, the event handlers of ASP.NET WebForms applications only support synchronous approaches. Of course, we can do the asynchronous approach within the WebForms application, but it's like a kind of a hacky way, right? We also need to rely on the third-party libraries for the dependency management as well. In other words, there's no built-in the IOC container support. That means the WebForms applications are very hard for testing. As a result, even though the ASP.NET WebForms applications are still great to use, it causes the maintenance overhead, meaning the cost of maintenance gets bigger and bigger. So we need to find out some alternatives already in the market. The first candidate could be ASP.NET MVC application. It supports both .NET Framework of the 4.8 as well as the modern .NET SDK libraries up to .NET 8. That sounds great to consider, doesn't it? But let's think about this. MVC application development requires completely different application architecture because the MVC application architecture is not a component-based one. In other words, we can migrate to this, but it needs huge code-based changes. Does it sound risky? Doesn't it? What about these types of applications? They're like Angular, React, Vue, or something else. They have component-based application architecture, which is similar to the WebForm applications, right? They also have huge ecosystems from the community with a lot of open source the project support. With that said, that also seems to be a good choice, doesn't it? However, the largest drawback of migrating to this way is that they are all JavaScript-based application frameworks or libraries. That means our entire code base has to change from .NET to JavaScript. It's even bigger changes than the previous one, which is the MVC, the application, MVC type of migration. Right, here we go. What about Blazor? Of course, this session is about Blazor. The answer is yes, we need to use Blazor. So let's think about this. Blazor is basically a component-based application architecture, which is similar to ASP.NET WebForms. Therefore, we can minimize our code base changes. And Blazor is written in C#. Therefore, there's lower learning curve for existing .NET application developers. So sounds like it seems that the Blazor can be a good candidate for WebForms migration. Do you agree? So if you agree with Blazor, we also need to convince ourselves for migration to Blazor. So as I mentioned earlier, both have similar component-based model, right? So let's compare to each other. The ASP.NET WebForms applications have ASPX page control and ASCX user control. On the other hand, Blazor applications have Razor component. So both web controls and component consist of the HTML part, which takes care of the UI representation, and the C# code part that looks after the UI logic. Another similarity between the WebForms and Blazor is that they have a similar the page lifecycle management. Let's take a look at this comparison. So this is not the 100% one-to-one match each other, but excuse me, but both have their page life cycles respectively. So for example, the WebForms application has page event handlers like page init, page load, and page render, while Blazor has page event handlers like set parameters, on initialized, on parameter set, and on after render. Even better, Blazor has both synchronous and asynchronous method. For example, on initialized and on initialized async. So far, we have discussed similarities between WebForms and Blazor. But these are not enough for the migration. The Blazor side should have more benefits so that we are convinced for migration. So what are they? The first one can be a data binding. So let's take a look at this comparison. So in the WebForms application, we use WebForms specific controls that require the server-side postback. So we use the runnet server, the attribute for the WebForms control. And within this postback, we identify the value of this control, right? On the other hand, in Blazor, we use standard HTML element with Blazor specific data binding because of the HTML5's extensibility. So with this data binding, we identify the value of the HTML element. We don't even need the server-side postback. In Blazor, the event handling has also been improved comparing to WebForms. So let's take a look at these two comparisons. In the WebForms application, the event handler, on-click event handler, in this example, only takes care of the synchronous method. That means if the event handling method takes longer than usual, the entire application is being blocked until the method completes its processing. On the other hand, in Blazor, the event handler on-click in this example can take either synchronous or asynchronous method. The way of using this asynchronous approach makes the web applications running in a non-blocking way. And this is the most eye-catching one, I guess. I can dare insist, we can use C# for both front-end application development and back-end application development, even interacting with each other. So this is an example. In a WebForms application, in order to handle this on-click the event, the server postback must happen, as I mentioned before. However, in this example, in Blazor, postback is not necessary. The event handler just executes the C# method bound to the event handler. In other words, the HTML element can be handled by C# code without JavaScript being involved, nor server postback. Actually, there is some JavaScript involved, but we don't have to care about that. How is happening? It's called JavaScript interoperability, or JS Intero. Interoperability brings us the seamless development experiences, as like both C# and JavaScript are working as the same. So back to the original, back to the previous the code, and I put the IJS runtime at the top as for the JS Intero capability. So within the button click async method, we call JavaScript interoperability to directly call JavaScript functions or the MyJS function, something like this. Right. So this JavaScript function is directly called within the C# code. That's how the JS Intero works. So far, we have discussed why we should consider our WebForms application to Blazor. Then how can we migrate our existing WebForms applications to Blazor? That will be the most important part of this session. So let me share some process, the step-by-step process. The first of all, we need to separate our business logic from the UI logic in the WebForms application. I think this will be one of the hardest and scariest part because the legacy code might get the UI logic mixed with the business logic. And it's even hard or even not able to split from each other. In other words, we need a lot of refactoring for legacy code base. I mentioned earlier that we would only need minimal code base changes. However, for this migration, this part, the separation, the UI logic is separated from the business logic. This part would be inevitable. For this refactoring, I would recommend using the standard libraries so that after the separation, reference them back to the WebForms application so that we can confirm our application. So the logic separation is successfully done properly. So once you successfully separated your business logic from the WebForms application, then choose an appropriate Blazor hosting model. Until .NET 7, we have two hosting models, right? So one is the server mode, which is known as Blazor Server, and the other one is the client mode, which is known as Blazor WebAssembly. Now, in .NET 8, we have introduced a new hosting model called streaming mode, known as SSR, which that stands for server-side rendering. So for those who are not familiar with the SSR is that the Blazor application renders the HTML page from the server side at first, while downloading the WebAssembly libraries to your browser. So once all the WebAssembly libraries are downloaded to your browser, then that WebAssembly takes care of the rest. This is a huge win because it makes our Blazor applications to become more SEO friendly, as well as the more like have improved the developer experience. So depending on your needs, you can choose either server mode or client mode or streaming mode. So when an appropriate Blazor hosting model is chosen, then add the reference class libraries that we refactored before. After that, migrate all the static files, including HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and images. Now, we need to migrate the configurations from the web.config file to app-settings.json. And finally, migrate your startup configurations from global.asax to program.cs. And once everything is done, now it's the time for the rewriting your ASPX page control and ASCX, the user control, to Blazor component. That includes data binding as well as event handling. Again, I have mentioned we would need minimal code changes, haven't I? But what I just told you looks like a lot and scary, right? That seems to be huge. Oh, that's the sounds headache, right? So for those are skeptical and scared for the migration, this is an open source project by Jeff Fritz, also known as C# Fritz. So Jeff has built this open source project to provide us with a one-to-one mapping of WebForms controls to Blazor component. So visit this URL, aka.ms/Blazor WebForms component. So you can find out some clues or ideas how you make your migration plan from WebForms applications to Blazor. But please make sure that this is not for your new applications, mimicking WebForms applications, right? Because consider this project only if you are migrating your WebForms applications to Blazor, because it's a kind of a stopgap, right? With lots of technical debts inside. That technical debt only focuses on the maximal compatibility between the WebForms and Blazor component, right? Now, let's try another demo using Blazor. So this time, I showed you the existing WebForms application, and this WebForm application will be migrated into the Blazor. Right, ready? So let's take a look. Now we have the WebForms application. So I'm going to close it. And then I have another web app, which is Blazor application. So I'm going to run this application. And it takes about time. It takes a little time to build up. So while we are waiting, let's take a look at the structure. So in .NET 8, the Blazor application has improved the folder structure, right? So within the root, and here we have only CSS file and JavaScript file, and everything is under the component. So under the component directory, we have layout folder, we have pages folder as well. So layout folder, has the navigation menu and layout, everything. And pages takes care of each pages. Okay. So, okay. So like web pages coming up. Okay, here we go. So I have this Blazor web application, and this is, this looks similar from the WebForms application. And this is actually based on the Blazor component. So I will put the same, oops, not this one. I will put, where is my YouTube URL? So this is my YouTube video. So this is my YouTube video. Then I'm going to put the summarize button, and it will show up our summary here. So while we are waiting, so let's get back to the code and take another look. So we have the home.razor file, right? That's the equivalent to the default.aspx page. And I have YouTube summarize component here. And where is the site.master pages? It goes here. Oops, not this one. It goes in app.razor file here. So app.razor file is basically the same thing as site.master file. And here we have started with HTML, and we had head section, we had body section here. And within the body section, that's the differences between from the previous until .NET 7. So we have render mode, right? Because we have consolidated 3 different modes in one Blazor project. So we need to choose the render mode. So for now, I chose the Blazor server mode. That's why we use interactive server here. But you can, if you choose the WebAssembly mode, then you can choose like an interactive WebAssembly or something like that. And if you choose the server-side rendering mode, streaming mode, and you will be able to choose a different one, right? And another one is that Blazor.web.js. This is the core part of JavaScript interoperability. But until .NET 7, we have the Blazor.server.js for the Blazor server application and Blazor.webassembly.js for the Blazor WebAssembly application. Now, we are all consolidated, so we use Blazor.web.js instead, right? And this is the one we are going to use, right? And, okay. So we have, this summary now, so which is great. And also I showed you before in here, the home Blazor file, we have component. And this component comes from this the component project. And this is the one. So basically that is similar to the user control. So this takes care of the UI representation part. And this is the code behind of that the user control or the Blazor component, which is the same thing. And it used event handler of asynchronous method, which is really great. So that's how the application works. So now this is the end of how we can migrate this application from WebForms to Blazor. Now let's get back to the slide again. Let's talk a little bit more about JavaScript interoperability nowadays. So there's something we need to consider. As I mentioned earlier, this JavaScript interoperability feature, we can call JavaScript functions directly from the C# and vice versa, right? And so why is it important? It's really convenient for us to use because there are still huge JavaScript ecosystems for the front-end application development. We can't ignore them and might still use them if necessary. So for this case, this JavaScript interop features can integrate the existing JavaScript-based UI component and libraries, right? So let me share another example. That Blazor application doesn't have the progress bar, progress indicator, while the WebForms application shows the progress bar while the data is handling, right? Now I'm going to introduce a React UI component that shows the progress bar and integrate it within the Blazor application. So let's get back here. We have in the component, we have this part, right? This progress bar. So that progress bar will be attached into the progress bar UI, and that UI comes from JavaScript interop. So this one, this progress bar. Actually, this progress bar is basically the JavaScript, actually, right? And it renders, it finds a progress bar element and render that progress bar, okay? And this is completely the React component, and this is wrapped by render progress bar function, and it is bundled with Webpack with the namespace of YouTube, right? And this will be bundled and the bundle.js file. That's why I show you this one. So once we add this bundle.js file into our WebForm application, then we are ready to use this JavaScript interoperability. And within the component file here, I'm going to, this one. I'm going to uncomment this. And what it says is that, excuse me, it calls JavaScript. So the reference is JavaScript interoperability and directly calls YouTube.render progress bar, which is coming from this bundle.js file, right? So once I do that, then let me try this again. So I copy this URL and clear. Then try this and click the, this time I'm going to choose the summary language in Korean, then summarize button, and see that progress bar is appearing. Now, that means that we don't, so this progress bar gives us indication that the data is progressing. The application is progressing behind, right? And it will disappear once the summary is coming up. Now, so we have almost time. So I think so we can visit later on, but let's get back. Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is the summary of that video, the same video written in spoken in English, but summarized in Korean, something like this. So, which is great. Now that visual indicator has gone away. So let's get back to the slide. So I think almost we get the end. So let's conclude. In the first place, we discussed why we should migrate our WebForms applications into Blazor. Then we discussed the benefits of Blazor, benefits of migration to Blazor. And then we also discussed the step-by-step process for the migration to Blazor. And finally, I showed you about using the benefits of using JavaScript interoperability feature for existing JavaScript libraries integration. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this session. Here are some resources that you can try after. First of all, you need to download, you can download in the .NET 8 SDK, and this is my sample application repository that I used throughout this session, aka.ms/YouTube summarizer. And this is the Blazor WebForms component. You can take a look for your migration consideration. And finally, there is a Fluent UI React library at the left-hand side. And actually, it is already wrapped with Blazor in the Blazor Fluent UI, which is aka.ms/Fluent UI/Blazor. And most importantly, it's your turn to use .NET 8. And again, thanks for watching. I'm Justin.
Thanks, Justin. It was a great session. As someone who started their web development career using WebForms, I know how people can be still struggling to migrate up from that, and that was a great look at how we can use some of the new stuff in Blazor for .NET 8 to bring that in.
Yep.
But yes, I know that you're going to be back in about an hour's time.
Yeah.
You'll be joining us here on the desk, well, the virtual desk for hosting. So I'll let you go, and we'll see you again shortly.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.